Okay, we're here, we're live. It's Thursday, and this is Community Matters. I'm Jay Fidell, and we're having a show today with Cindy Adams. Cindy Adams is the CEO of Aloha United Way, doing good for the community, really important. Cindy Adams. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Jay. Thank you for having me today.
And as it were, we met at a nonprofit.
We did,
you know,
yes.
How long? 2 years ago, maybe?
That's right. I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah.
Nothing has changed.
No.
It was an amazing discussion we had. Anyway, so 6 weeks ago, you got to be the CEO of Aloha United Way. And that's why we're calling this show Aloha United Way is the way. Because it is the, you know, the king daddy of the charitable organizations in Hawaii. And we need to know what it's doing, how it's helping, whether, you know, the problems that it's trying to resolve are getting better or worse. And so, you know, you are the canary in the coal mine, as it were, to see how things are doing, you know, especially downtown with the homeless, whatnot. So let's talk about Aloha United Way. So you got there 6 months, 6 weeks ago.
6 weeks ago, yeah.
What did you find?
So what I found was an organization that I think is in the process of rebuilding momentum. I think there was a period of time a few years ago where we were very challenged in terms of being able to articulate and demonstrate our relevance to the community. And Kim Janala, who stepped in as the leadership.
TV personality.
Yes, did an amazing job of restructuring and then also rebuilding the trust of the community and the donors in Aloha United Way. And so I think we're in a really good spot right now. I think we have other challenges moving forward, but I think from that perspective, in terms of community trust and faith, I think that we have that.
Okay, well, let's talk about the structure of it, okay? It's an organization that reaches out on behalf of many charities. It's not just one, it's, I guess, dozens anyway.
Right.
So you collect on behalf of those organizations, and then you distribute what you collect to them. So, yeah. That's my signal. We have an unwritten language here, which we discussed before the show. So Cindy knows what I mean. You may see this again.
This is a talk story.
Well, it's a tech show, see?
Yes.
And the problem is that hair, especially women's hair, creates static electricity. We know about this because we're tech, right? And this affects the microphone and thus the sound. We want to give you the best possible sound, right? Okay, so how do you do this? You reach out to the whole community and you say to them, you know, we represent these various charities, and if you give your money to us, we'll cover all the bases, or the important bases.
Right.
How does that work?
So we are a fundraiser, and we don't offer services, we fundraise. So we represent between 250 and 300 partner agencies who are considered Aloha United Way partner agencies who provide direct services to the community and to their constituents. So every year we launch a workplace campaign.
That's right. It's always in the workplace. It's a workplace. It's
predominantly in the workplace. That is, by and large, the bulk of the contributions and donations that we receive. And so a couple of things. One is we've had a very long relationship with many companies in Hawaii. So some of them have been doing this for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. We started as something called Community Chest, have a very close relationship with labor and also with many of the companies within our community. And so they donate through a workplace campaign. The really great thing about that methodology is people who want to give can do it through a payroll deduction. So it can be $1, you know, a payroll, actually it's usually a lot more than that, but it's a relatively manageable amount that people have taken out so they kind of don't miss it when they bring their paycheck home, which is, I think, what continues to support the contribution level. And so they do that all year long, and as we collect these monies, we move the money back out to the community. So our function is to bring this money in, and then we move it back out. And we move it back out in kind of two different ways. One is people who donate can make what are called direct designations. When they do that, we pass through 100% of the donation to the agency that they have designated. It can be the Humane Society, it can be After School All-Stars, Goodwill, Salvation Army, American Red Cross, all of the agencies that people are very familiar with. We also have a fair number of relatively unknown nonprofits who are doing good work as well. And people don't usually designate to them. But what we do is we also have 3 impact areas that we focus on: education, poverty prevention, and safety net. Education is focused on making sure that our keiki are prepared to get into kindergarten, and then we also look at increasing high school graduation rates. Poverty prevention can be things like financial literacy, teen pregnancy prevention, programs like that. And then the third one is safety net, which is people in crisis. So it would be substance abuse rehabilitation, homelessness, critical services like that. So when somebody doesn't designate directly to an agency and they designate to Aloha United Way or to one of our impact areas, we then have the flexibility to take that funding and distribute it to partner agencies, so the same partner agencies that you can designate to, but who have defined very specific programs that they're going to implement with very clear outlines, very clear timelines, and we now have the option and the flexibility to fund those programs in each of those areas. So it's a really, when somebody doesn't want to give directly to an agency, but they want to do something in any one of those areas, they can designate it to an impact area, and that's exactly where their money will go.
Okay, and the 3 areas are education, poverty prevention, and the social, I guess, the social safety net.
Safety net, yes.
Yeah. So when I get my form from Aloha United Way, it's gonna have a bunch of charities, and I can check off my favorites.
Right.
And then that'll be a dedicated contribution. Or I can check off one of those 3 areas.
Yes.
Or I can check off a combination, I suppose.
Yes, you can. Sure.
So,
sure.
We're going to take a short break, and during this break, we are going to correct all the technological issues. We'll be right back. This is Jay Fidell, that's Cindy Adams. We'll be right back.
Aloha, welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm the host of a program called Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department on the Big Island. I also serve in the state senate, which, please don't hold that against me, doesn't detract from my television program. We speak about all the big healthcare issues in the state. We get together on Tuesdays from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we try to talk about the most important issues in healthcare. This is a terrific venue for people to learn about healthcare. There are many programs on this station. We broadcast it later, not just on the internet, but also on OC16. Thanks for joining us. Please be informed healthcare consumers.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Cindy Adams, the CEO of Aloha United Way. Calling this show Aloha United Way is the way. Okay, here on Community Matters, part of the ThinkTech series. So, so I can make choices, and if I'm in my workplace and somebody comes around to me, presumably my company, they say, Jay, how would you like to, give through Aloha United Way? We're all doing it, and this will be, there's a couple of very compelling points about this. This will be, the best way you can make your contribution to charitable causes this year. So I get all these choices. What do you recommend? Do you think I should just not make choices and give you the complete discretion on, which of these impact areas to go or what charities to go?
So I guess I would answer your question this way. One is, some people have a very specific desire to give to a particular agency because that agency has a connection to them. Hospice Hawaii is a really good example. If you've had a mom or a dad who has had hospice care, then oftentimes you want to give to an organization like that. I will say, having said that, one of the things that we do as a part of the impact areas that we represent is we vet the agencies that we work with in each of those areas, and we take them through a fairly rigorous process in terms of their proposals and how they're intending to use the money they're asking for. And so if somebody wants to make an impact in their community, but doesn't know exactly where to put the money, and they want to make sure that it gets utilized very well. So I consider someone's donation to be an investment in the community. So they want to make an investment in the community. We can help to provide that guidance based on the programs that we're looking to fund during that campaign year.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I mean, this might be something I would do. I'd be really, really interested in homelessness. And if you frame it that way, and I think it's a great way to frame it, you know, it's an investment in the community. I want the homelessness problem to be ameliorated, and right now. And if you can show me that you will actually have an impact on that,
right?
I want to put all my money on that, because I think that's priority number one. I just happen to feel that way, and you can do that for me.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that we have been doing, and I think that we can be kind of more consistent and aggressive about, is communicating on a regular basis more information about the outcomes that people's investments are having in the community.
What a great
right?
idea, Cindy.
So
that's a new idea. Is that your idea?
that's not a new idea.
I still
But
like
we do want to, thank you, we do want to make sure, because that is connecting the dot, right, between the donor, their investment, and the result in the community and the impact that they're having. And I have to say that the issues that we're trying to address are not issues that you can address overnight. These are systemic issues in the community based on a number of variables. Homelessness, for example, in Hawaii, high cost of living, lack of affordable housing, you know, not having a great number of kind of living wage options available to people are all reasons, I think, that contribute. There are other reasons as well, but those are very big reasons why you know, we have issues like homelessness, and so it's not just such a simple problem. It's a very complex problem to address.
Well, what you do in general is a complex thing. I just wonder how much of the money that you get is undesignated. You know, Cindy, do with it what you want.
Right.
We trust your judgment, your appreciation of the disadvantaged among us. Do what you want. How much of it comes in that way?
So it's between, I would say, probably, so last year, because we don't know what it is for this year, it was around 70%, 65 to 70%, I think, was undesignated. So we had flexibility to invest in community impact programs. I think, you know, it's kind of interesting when you think about donor segments. I mean, it's very much like looking at customer segments in the for-profit world, right? The face of philanthropy is changing.
Just as the face of the community is
Exactly, exactly. And so the behavior, what causes people to want to give and the way they give is very different. It's changing over time, generationally, right, as people are growing into the workforce and people are retiring out of the workforce. And so one of our challenges is to understand how the face of philanthropy is changing and figure out what our relevance is to the donors as that changes and what our relevance is to the community, and trying to bring all of that together so that we have a very viable position and a service that we can offer that is of value to the community.
Yeah, well, your notion about investing in the community really strikes me. I think is so important. Because government by itself, and I'll talk about this later, government by itself is not the solution for a variety of reasons. But going back to the application, so to speak. So I am XYZ charitable organization. I'm a 501c something, 501c3. I like to help homeless. I don't know if that's the right designation. I like to help homeless. I come to you and I say, you know, Cindy, I actually never did help the homeless. And, you know, most of the members of my board have, you know, been in jail at one time or another. A lot of them, you know, for fraud.
Okay.
But we care a lot.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you exactly what my cost of, cost of administration is, but it's somewhere north of 60%.
Okay.
What happens?
So, first of all, we have a set of criteria, mostly financial, that is like an initial qualifier for a partner agency. And there are a handful of other requirements that we look at as well. So once an agency gets past kind of those requirements, then they become a partner agency, and we have brochures so people, when they're signing up for the workplace campaign, they can see the list of partner agencies and they can select if they want to do that. The other thing that we do is, so when we have the undesignated funds for community impact, we actually have, and this is a very transparent process, we have 3 impact councils, one for each area: education, poverty prevention, safety net. These are comprised of volunteers. Some of them are subject matter experts. Some of them are partner agencies with their partner hat taken off, and each council reviews the proposals that fall within their impact area. They kind of assess them for value impact outcomes, and then make a recommendation on which ones should be funded, how much they should be funded. Last year, just for your information, we had requests for between $8 and $9 million of funding. We had about $3 million in undesignated funds that we could distribute. So big disparity in terms of
So they
how
only
many
get a
you're
fraction
requesting.
of what they asked
Exactly.
for.
When those assessments are made, it rolls up to what we call our executive, to the impact committee, and the committee actually has a board seat on it, and they make the final decision, and that's how we determine who ultimately gets funding. So there's a very clear and transparent process. More importantly, we require that the proposals clearly communicate what they're trying to achieve, have a budget associated with it, and very clear metrics so that we can measure the outcome and the results. We fund for 3 years because many of these projects cannot be accomplished over a 12-month period. So there's longevity and sustainability to the program, and every 6 months we take a look at where the program's at and measure them against their benchmarks.
They report back to you?
Yes.
You ever go see them, check out their
Yes,
office and all
yes,
this?
we do. In fact, we do.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting. I mean, the reason I ask this, it's not like a law school exam. Count all the issues in this fact pattern. But, the reason I mention it is that without you, there would be fraud. And you can prevent that. You can stand it, you can protect me. Because I'm going to make an investment. I want the investment to find the right home. I want it to work. I don't want it to be wasted. It's hard-earned money, actually, so I don't want it to be wasted. And I think, Aloha United Way gives us a kind of an assurance that this is not going to go off the side. This is going to be useful. Do you ever find, however, are you ever disappointed with some of the agencies you deal with?
So disappointed would probably be a strong word. I would say I think sometimes there are lessons learned in the process, and we certainly provide them with that feedback. We've got a very broad range of partner agencies that we support, from, very well established, very large agencies like Child and Family Services, as an example. So they have, they're very well established. They have very recognizable and measurable outcomes. I think where we tend to see more of what you're asking about is probably with the smaller ones who haven't necessarily built their capacity. So it's less about their heart is always in the right place. It's more about how can we help them build capacity and become more scalable so that they can continue to support their program moving forward.
That's a whole new thing, isn't it? To me it is. Because I feel better to know that you're not only going to measure them, but you're going to teach them, you're going to train them.
Yes.
Like, what's the comparison, if there is one, between that and what Hano does? the Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations?
I think, well, first of all, for us, they provide us with kind of public policy
Hano
information. Hano does.
Yeah.
And they provide other services as well. So the reason why, by the way, I brought up this issue of training and capacity building is because we did a survey about a year ago with our partner agencies, and that was some of the very predominant feedback that we got, was that they were looking for help. And it wasn't the big agencies, of course. It was the smaller ones that were necessarily looking for this type of skill building and education that they needed. So, you know, and quite frankly, because they are smaller, it necessarily has to be very affordable for them. So we're looking at ways to offer it either at no cost or at very, very little cost.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, you know, how many of your various agencies are nationals? How many are locals? How many are big? How many are small? I mean, it must be difficult to, you know, to have a limited pool of money with requests for 3-4 times that amount, and then have all these people from all over the world, you know, potentially coming to ask you. But, you know, how do you, I guess, if they've been around a while, that gives them credit. If they've been national and have good records nationally, that gives them credit. If they have proven executives, that gives them credit. All that track record stuff. But if I'm, what's your array of agencies? What's the demographic, if you will?
So I don't know. So I probably can't answer the question the way you're looking for the answer. I would say, you know, if you think about a bell curve, right? The majority of our nonprofits that we work with tend to be middle to small, as opposed to, and local, as opposed to, I think when you're talking about national, you're thinking about like the American Lung Association, American Cancer Society. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do have some of those, but by and large, they tend to be in the greater percentage of the bell curve, is medium to small nonprofits.
Yeah, now I want to get to the question of government, and you know, we'll have to take a break in the middle of this, but I still would like to open the subject. You know, I remember George Bush at his inauguration in 2002. He wanted faith-based agencies, and so I guess I would ask you, how much of your money comes from faith-based agencies, and how much goes to faith-based agencies, if anything? And then, you know, my own feeling about it, I'll tell you, is that, you know, I think you have government, you have faith-based agencies, and you have what I would call community. And community, you know, sometimes there's overlap, but by definition, there has to be overlap.
Sure.
But community, to me, is the most important one. It's the one where the real professionals get in, you know, like Aloha United Way, and find out exactly what needs to be done, and do it in the most efficient way possible, without bias or prejudice of any kind. Just, you know, love, if you will, for the community. So, any thoughts on that? Let me put it that way.
I'm not sure I understood what your question was.
It wasn't a question, it was more like a statement.
Okay.
But, you know, can you, where do you fit? I mean, are you doing something that government should be doing but isn't?
Are
you doing something that the churches should be doing but aren't or can't? Or are you doing something that you see as a kind of community service that fits between them and that does things that neither one of them can do very well?
Okay, so I think it's all of the above. I think that, first of all, governments aren't going to fund 100% of the, I mean, the reason why nonprofits exist is because there are holes in services available to the community. So I think faith-based organizations serve a purpose in terms of addressing very significant issues. Some of them have preschools, some of them feed the hungry, you know, some of them house people. So I think the answer to me is that we all have to work together. We all have a contribution that's very valid that we can make. I don't think any one of us can solve any of these problems on our own. They're too complex for that kind of a solution. And I think the challenge is that, you know, there's just a limited amount of money that's available in our community to address the issues, which forces us to prioritize what we're going to do. You know, we do that in our own little way in terms of funding that comes through us. The government does it, faith-based organizations do it. And I think what we have to do is kind of find kind of the intersection, the trifecta, right, of all of that, and figure out how we can create a collaboration that really moves the needle on some of these issues, as opposed to taking a very splintered approach, which doesn't give us the critical mass that helps us to make that kind of a change in a big way.
Are you getting funds from government or the churches?
Not from the government and not from churches. We fund Catholic charities, for example.
Okay, it's the other way.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're going to take a break, but after we come back, here's what I think I'd like to ask you and discuss. Now, that puts you, in my opinion, in the best place of all of those organizations to find out what's going on out there, to find out how many people are in trouble, how many people need, you know, with the condition of education, the condition of the safety net, the condition of the, what was the third one?
Poverty.
The poverty, you know, how serious is it? Because, you know, frankly, from where you are, I would take your view of it before I would take anybody's. I would say that you are really qualified to answer those things and figure out where the community is and where it's going, you know, on a trajectory basis. So let's take a break and come back, and we can talk about the status of the community. Ooh, that's Cindy Adams. She's the CEO of Aloha United Way. I'm Jay Fidell. We're into community matters today about Aloha United Way, and Aloha United Way is the way. We'll be right back.
Aloha, this is Martin Despang, co-host of the Urban Transcendence show by Alejandra Yamashita and Martin Despang. And me being an architect and an educator in architecture, I'm really interested in that we make our urban environment here in downtown Honolulu as exciting, invigorating, and challenging, beautiful as our wonderful paradise natural environment. We're going to bring in guests from a diversity of areas that help us to learn how we can achieve that goal that shouldn't be that hard to reach. So we look very much forward to see you then. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech and Community Matters. We're talking about Aloha United Way, and it is the way, with Cindy Adams, the CEO of Aloha United Way, and we're exploring exactly how all these little pieces, big pieces, fit together in our community. And the question hanging before the break is, you know, Aloha United Way is in the center of things, in my opinion, and you know where it comes from. You know, perhaps you have a better handle on that than most others, and you know where it should go to. I mean, you have to make judgments, but you make the judgments on the basis of information you get, and you can tell between poverty, education, and safety net, your three impact areas. You can tell where it's needed and how it's needed and who can satisfy the need. This is actually an enviable position in terms of the sociology of it. Wow, I'm impressed with that. So how do you find out, okay, what you need to do? How do you find out the condition of the community?
So a good deal of our knowledge and insight into what's happening in the community actually flows from the people that are being served in the community through the partner agencies. So we spend a good deal of time talking with them, interacting with them on a regular basis to make sure that we understand what's happening in the community, both from a provider perspective as well as from a needs perspective. I think, you know, the role that we're in maybe gives us, most partner agencies are focused on their mission, right? So it's siloed to that extent, not that they aren't cognizant of other issues in the community, but they have a mission and an objective to accomplish. I think, you know, in our position, one of our unique perspectives is we kind of have a broader purview of what's going on in the community, particularly as it relates to the three impact areas and how they fit together.
We have pictures of those areas.
We do.
Can we show them now?
Sure. Okay,
just so we can get ahead. Now, what is this? Tell us what the picture is.
So this is Meals on Wheels, and this is Claire Shimabukuro, and she's providing a meal. So they provide hundreds of meals every day to people who cannot get out of their homes. So these are people that are homebound, and they provide hot meals and a delivery service. And it's not just, you know, food for you know, to keep people going. It's actually food for the soul, because there's an opportunity for people to have a conversation, actually see how well these people are doing in their own homes.
Yes. And we would not know about this unless we had Meals on Wheels to go into those homes and get a handle on how those people are doing.
Yes.
Okay, what other picture we have?
So this is a preschool, and again, this is, you know, one of the things that we are looking at and trying to drill down into is screening of young children, developmental screening. It seems logical and intuitive that if you can identify an easily addressed developmental issue with a child before they get into kindergarten, that helps them to be much more effective in learning once they get into kindergarten and then through graduation. There are many issues associated with developmental issues as a result of not providing a solution at that age. And so that's another thing that we're focused on. And I think is, you know, when children are in preschool, adults get exposed to these children and have an opportunity to identify issues with children and therefore make a recommendation or refer them to a service. So that's another way that service providers are exposed to this, you know, on a very real-time basis.
Can bring you information.
Yes.
How about the third one now?
So the third one is Dress for Success. This is through the YWCA. So they receive hundreds of donations: shoes, purses, jewelry, clothes.
You can see
for
it at the Women's Y,
yes,
right down the block.
Yes, it's right down the block. So women can come in here, pick out some clothes to get ready for their first interview. So it's amazing, you know, what that does for your self-esteem, particularly when you're doing something that's very riskful, like making your first interview, right? So this is a really great service that they provide, and all of these things make a big difference in the community. And you know, I think oftentimes, you know, people who donate, especially those who are very committed to giving every year, don't always feel the impact of their investment in the community. And that's why I said earlier, we want to be much more aggressive in communicating that information out. It's helpful to the donors and it's helpful to the partner agencies to make that connection.
Sure. And you bring all these lessons from the profit world.
Yes.
That would be a lesson that would be resident in the profit world. If I'm a stockholder or a lender, you better tell me what's going on.
Exactly.
Because I want, you know, then I'll be a lender and a stockholder some more again later, you know. And it also strikes me from this discussion, Cindy, that this is not an easy job. You were talking about how you wake up at 2 in the morning and all that with all these issues, and just as a lot of nonprofits do. But it strikes me that, you know, you've got a lot on your plate. You've got all these people you need to approach for money. You got staff that helps you, you know, keep that going, and you've got all these agencies that you've got to watch and learn from, make sure everything is shipshape and so forth. There's a lot of moving parts in what you do. Are you sure you want to do this?
So the answer is yes. I really want to do this. I think, you know, you mentioned, you know, for-profit in terms of experience, and to me this is, you know, it's a different mission, but there are so many similarities, and you know, it's kind of, I used to think of it as, and I still sometimes do, what is it I learned in the for-profit world that I can apply in the nonprofit world, right? But really, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, it doesn't matter. It should be best practice, operational efficiencies, ongoing communication, you know, making sure that whoever your customers are, that they understand what kinds of services you're providing to them and the value you bring to them. So it doesn't matter whether it's for-profit or nonprofit. All of those things apply. And yes, I do want to be here, and it's a tremendous challenge for all of us, the whole community.
Well, and then I want to get into the sea changes too. I mean, because you know, as a CEO, you've got to recognize them and deal with them and handle them in every way you can. And by this time, it's only 6 weeks. That's a you know, it's a short period of time. But it could be a lifetime too. Yes. So I'd like to ask you about the condition of the donor community in Hawaii. How are we doing? Are people, it's like they talk about voting, a couple days ago, and we had really dismal stats on who's voting. With just over 50%. That's not enough.
I think it's the worst in the nation.
Yeah, that's
actually.
awful.
Yes.
And so you wonder if there's some leakage there between that kind of lack of community caring, and this. But how are we doing in terms of donors, big ones and little ones? Are people as motivated maybe as they used to be? I always thought in Hawaii, people were very caring. It was an ethnic thing. They were really caring. And it wasn't that somebody bossed them into doing it. They did it out of their heart. How are we doing on that level?
So I would say, unlike what we saw with voter turnout, I would agree with you. I think in Hawaii, we have a very caring and a very giving community, and there are lots of reasons for that. Cultural diversity, kind of the Hawaiian spirit. There are lots of reasons why Hawaii, I think, is very unique from that perspective. I also think we're very insulated geographically, and I think we feel this desire and obligation to help each other, because really if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it, to be very honest.
Nobody's going to come to our rescue.
That's right, that's right. And so I think giving in Hawaii is very strong. I think what's changing when I say that the face of philanthropy is changing is how people want to give, and so probably it's mostly how people want to give. So if you think about, maybe somebody who's my age and has been used to workplace campaigns. Yeah, thank you. It's a level of comfort, right? This pattern of giving. And I think kids, 20, 25 years old, right? Very easy to just text a message and send $10 to the American Red Cross. So I think what we need to understand, particularly for Aloha United Way, is what are the different ways to give? What matters to each of those segments of the giving population? And how do we make sure that we have something, if we can, for each of them that continues to keep them engaged in community giving, so that we can carry this forward as generations change out, right? Because we have the baby boomers that are moving into retirement, and we have millennials that are moving into the mainstream workplace. So there are a number of challenges.
Does social media fit in your program?
Yes, absolutely.
But if your program is based on the workplace, how does the social media integrate it?
So two ways at least. One is whenever we have events or we're participating in workplace campaigns or fundraisers, we push that out through social media. In addition, we partner with our agencies. If they have things that they're doing, fundraisers, activities, book drives, whatever, we also push that out through Aloha United Way social media. So we try to stay in very close communication with them to help facilitate that process.
Okay, now the big question. We only have a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't leave more time for this. What is our condition here? Sometimes, often the government says we don't have the money to help anybody, And there used to be these grants in aid. Some of them were worthy, some of them weren't not worthy. But the government, it seems to me, is giving less for this and is more stingy about the social safety net, both federally and locally. And if it's federally, it affects us locally.
Right.
So, I think we have a problem in the community. That's my perception. But you're much closer to it. So how are we doing out there? Those people at the other end of Meals on Wheels, the people who live in the pup tents around the Children's Museum in Kaka'ako, the people who are, on the street and looking for soup kitchens, the people who don't have anything. How are we doing? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? I mean, I would guess that you're sort of staving a flood of difficulty, trying to hold back a disaster. But you tell me.
So, the homeless problem is, in my estimation, getting worse. I have to say, so I just moved back from Dallas, Texas. I've been gone for just over a year. And it was surprising to me when I came back to see so much more of that in the community. I think, so that's one issue. I also think, as we think about longevity for humans, people are living longer. People who have retired, I mean, the aging population is getting much bigger. I think we have a very specific set of issues that surround that. And I think that, you know, we're probably seeing an increase in older homeless population.
Very, very pathetic.
Yes, yes. And, you know, these are people that have virtually no income or very fixed incomes, right? So as inflation or as the cost of living goes up, they have no flexibility to adjust to that at all.
They have to work in a lifetime.
Sure. And the other thing is, you know, what's really interesting about Hawaii, I think even more so than most anywhere else in the United States, is this extended family notion, where if somebody were to lose a job or somebody were to have a baby or somebody were to get very sick, the extended family comes around and helps to take care of this person. When somebody doesn't have an extended family and they lose a job, they get very sick and they can't work anymore, or, you know, somebody gets pregnant and you know, and they don't have a means to support their family or this baby, there aren't very many options available to this person, and it becomes very, very difficult for them to live here without becoming homeless, I think. And so I think the safety net of services are there, but I think we have to get better of looking at it as a continuum of care. It's great if you can house somebody for a few days, but they need to be checked for health and mental health issues. And if there are any, those need to be addressed. They need to potentially be job trained, taught how to do an interview if they've been out for a while or don't have the right skills. So it's a continuum of services to get somebody from point A to point B, and I think we need to figure out how to connect all of that and maximize the investment we're all making across that continuum.
And it is a community obligation.
It is.
It's separate from government and it's separate from faith-based. It's a matter of making this kind of analysis, getting this kind of information, taking the pulse of the community and finding out. Otherwise, we lose touch.
We do.
You know, and we lose our own soul in the process. You know, I remember when Steve Levinson, Judge Steve Levinson, I think he was still sitting, and I got appointed to some board, and he said, you know, now that you're in government, all of you people, he addressed a number of people who'd just been appointed. Now that you're in government, you can't go back. You've crossed the Rubicon. You've been bit, you know, by the call of government service. And he was right about that, and I kept thinking of that. But you know, today with you, I'm thinking of a slight digression of that, a variation of that. That is, you get into nonprofits, you get into community service, and you're also like crossing a Rubicon. You can't go back. Now you're wedded to community service. I wanted to ask you if that's true, and if it is true, it sounds to me like one of the most noble professions there can be. It's not social work in the old-fashioned classical sense of social work. It's community social work.
Service.
And you take on this huge obligation. Wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's all yours, Cindy. It's all yours.
The answer is yes. So I started a few years ago with the Hawaii Meth Project. Then I went back. So that was my first experience truly with nonprofit, besides volunteering as I was growing up. And I have to say, that was the most rewarding thing I had ever done in my career. Then went back to for-profit for a little while, and now I've come back into nonprofit and realized I should never have left nonprofit. So it's tremendously rewarding. It is.
Where does it go from here? Where do you think the community, the state go from here? I mean, you're at the center of something, and I wonder if, you know, whether you walk down the street or sit in your office and you feel, aside from the travails of dealing with these issues, I wonder if you feel a sense of abiding optimism or abiding pessimism about the whole system.
So two things. One is, now, when I'm in the community, walking somewhere, I look at it completely differently because my eyes are wide open. I would say, both because of me, my personality, but also because I don't think there's any other way to look at it, I have an abiding sense of optimism. for the future. And I think, you know, we have a number of issues that we have to address. I think being optimistic about what our potential outcome is the only way I would approach it. And I would not sub-optimize my effort in order to get there.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to, watching this discussion, somebody wanted to make a contribution, have their company, you know, sign up to make a contribution with Aloha United Way, how would they proceed?
They can go to our website, which is auw.org. They can also call me directly.
She's going to give her number now.
It's 543-2200, and I would be happy to have that conversation and take that call.
That's great. That's Cindy Adams, CEO of Aloha United Way. I've been talking about Aloha United is the way, and it is the way. Here on Community Matters with the ThinkTech series. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, always good.
Thank you.
Okay.